So this week, I'm going to talk about how stem cells in our airways can protect us when there's not enough oxygen around. And this research was published in Science magazine in January 2021. All right, so some background here. Our airways connect our mouth to our lungs. That's how we get oxygen into our system. Now, these airways are lined with cells. And here's a bigger picture of them. And most of these cells are run-of-the-mill epithelial cells. But every once in a while, we see these special cells called neuroendocrine cells, or NE cells. What's really interesting is that in patients with lung diseases like asthma or COPD or cystic fibrosis, there are tons and tons of these neuroendocrine cells. And the question is, what are they doing? So COPD is the lung disease that happens when somebody smokes a lot, and cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder in which the lungs get infected very frequently, and it becomes really hard to breathe. So again, these researchers wanted to know, where do these neuroendocrine cells come from, and what are they doing? Why are there so many of them in these patients with lung disease? So here's the experiment that the researchers did to answer this question. They gave some mice air with low oxygen in it to breathe. Now, normally, the air that we breathe is 21% oxygen. They gave the mice air that had only 8% oxygen to breathe. And remarkably, what they found is that the number of neuroendocrine cells in these mice shot up when they were breathing in air that had low oxygen. The other thing that the researchers noticed is that these neuroendocrine cells don't divide. So the mystery here is, where are they coming from? It's not like one of them can divide to give rise to other cells. And what the researchers found is that these neuroendocrine cells come from stem cells in our airways. What are stem cells? Well, most cells in our body are not stem cells. They are specialized and have a specific function. So for example, our heart cells help to pump blood. Our eye cells help us to see. Our skin cells protect us from the environment. However, there are special cells in our body called stem cells. And these are pretty unique because they can turn into any other kind of cell in the body. So these researchers found that these neuroendocrine cells were coming directly from these stem cells, which now really leads to the question, well, why are they so important? What are they doing? So remember that the mice that were breathing in low oxygen air had lots and lots of these neuroendocrine cells develop. So then what the researchers did is they took out these neuroendocrine cells when the mice were breathing in low oxygen. And they used a laser to basically deactivate these neuroendocrine cells. And what they found is that all the cells around them died. On the other hand, when the mice were breathing low oxygen and the neuroendocrine cells were there, they released this chemical that allowed all the cells around them to live in this low oxygen environment. And this is important because usually when there's not enough oxygen, these other cells would have died. So these neuroendocrine cells were protecting the airways of these mice when there wasn't enough oxygen. All right, so here's the recap. This research has found that these neuroendocrine cells can protect the airways when there's not enough oxygen, and they come directly from stem cells. Now, remember that these neuroendocrine cells are greatly increased in people with lung diseases like asthma or COPD or cystic fibrosis. And so one thought is that maybe the bodies of these people are making lots of these neuroendocrine cells here to protect them, protect their airways, because maybe they can't get enough oxygen in because of their lung disease. All right, thanks for joining me, and see you next week.